Hello, and welcome back to At Your Pace Online's 6-hour class on driving safety for Texas drivers. I'm Rob Robison, your instructor. As I said earlier, the purpose of this class is to allow Texas drivers a method for reducing or eliminating the number of driving points they've received because of citations they may have gotten on Texas highways. Hopefully, the class will make you a better driver too, and that can benefit everyone. This segment of our class will cover factors influencing driver performance. We're going to look at 5 subject areas. First, we'll study driving attitudes, habits, and emotions. This includes aggressive driving and its negative consequences. Second, the effects of alcohol and other drugs on driving safety. Third, how physical conditions affect your driving, including drowsy driving. Fourth, the necessity for drivers to have a basic level of knowledge about Texas driving laws and procedures. And fifth, an overall understanding of the driving task. Now that we know where we're going, let's get started. Let's start out this segment with a simple fact. Drivers increase their risk of being involved in a crash by almost 10 times when they drive while they're emotionally upset. This is according to a 2-year study done by the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. The study was based on 1,600 verified crashes among 3,500 participants and covering 35 million miles of actual naturalistic driving over 2 years. It also included 905 high-severity accidents causing injuries and property damage. Of those 905 severity accidents, drivers-related factors, including driver fatigue, error, impairment, and distraction, were present in nearly 90% of those crashes. So what are some of the more dangerous attitudes a driver can bring into the vehicle with them when they're driving? Of all the attitudes that a driver can have, one of the most dangerous and widespread is just being in a hurry. There's a lot of validity to the old saying, speed kills. The sad truth is that a lot of the time, those who are killed or injured aren't the ones in a hurry. Instead, they're innocent drivers or passengers who are simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Another fact about speeding is that it's the most commonly ticketed driving offense. So why not slow down, be safer, and get fewer tickets? Another dangerous attitude is when a driver thinks about violence. It might be something as simple as another driver's inattention that makes a driver want to get revenge. When many drivers have a close call, their first impulse is to fight back. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do. We'll talk a bit more about road rage in a minute. Another attitude that goes with being angry is the frame of mind that we can get into when we think other drivers are all worse drivers than we are. The fact of the matter is that most experienced drivers are pretty good when they're thinking about their driving. It's the same with us. We're good drivers, unless, of course, we're thinking about what a rotten driver the other guy is. When a driver carries their anger or frustration with them, they begin to feel like driving in traffic is a contest of wills with other drivers. The message to be remembered is that no matter how you drive, other drivers are not going to drive the way you think they should. And this often leads to a denial of our own bad driving habits. We say to ourselves, it's not me, it's the way the other guy drives. But of course, we're wrong. It is us. Psychologists and other mental health professionals point to the difference between reacting to a situation and responding to it. A reaction is immediate and driven by beliefs, biases, and prejudices of the unconscious mind. When you react or do something without thinking, that's the unconscious mind taking over the thought process. A reaction is based in the immediate moment and the reaction doesn't take into consideration the ultimate consequences of your driving actions. Reactions are considered more instinctive and are usually, at least on some level, a defense mechanism. Usually, a reaction is something you'll regret later. As opposed to reactions, responses are usually a bit slower in developing. They are based on information from both the conscious and the unconscious mind. Usually, responses will be more inclusive of other factors and drivers. In other words, responses take into consideration the well-being not only of you, but of those around you. They consider the long-term effects and are often much more in line with your real values. It's interesting and surprising to look at some of the actual effects severe emotional responses can have on us. These are effects like suddenly failing to recognize developing driving situations, like a quickly expanding traffic slowdown, or debris on the highway ahead of you, or maybe being unable to anticipate or decide what other drivers around you are going to do. Severe emotional responses can also cause you to suddenly perform risky maneuvers and driving changes, like cutting across lanes of traffic to try to take an off-ramp, or making sudden lane changes. Emotional responses can also cause you to temporarily lose the fine motor movements that skilled driving maneuvers require. If you've ever been angry and turned a corner and tried to dim your high beams at the same time, you've experienced this. These emotional responses can also make you feel as if you're detached from other drivers, vehicles, and conditions on the road. Clinical studies have actually shown that severe emotional states can have a negative impact on physical reaction times, as well as a decrease in your ability to focus your attention. One takeaway from this is that when you're driving, it's useless to hope that other drivers are going to know anything about you and what you're thinking. But you can do one simple thing to ease the tension and frustration for the drivers around you, and that is when you make a mistake, acknowledge it. This can be done just by establishing eye contact with the other driver and letting them see that you understand and acknowledge that what you did was improper. Most experts feel little can be done about driver attitudes getting worse today. But there are still things that as drivers we can try ourselves. There are some simple methods that you can try to at least give yourself a fighting chance to reduce your stress and maybe even lower the chances of an accident or a citation. Let's look at a few. First, you can try to lower the stress level in your vehicle. Play music that you enjoy, and look around as you drive. Not only does this aid in relaxing you, but experts agree that as you move your eyes around, you're actually staying more alert as well. Second, try to maintain a positive attitude, even when drivers around you don't. Focus on giving other drivers a little more slack. Third, when you start getting angry, make a serious effort to divert your thoughts to something else. One thing that sounds strange can be really helpful, and that is to talk to yourself through the tense driving situations. This is actually a method that's taught to professional road racing drivers. A good practice is also to begin allowing yourself more time to reach a destination. In our crazy world today, too many of us are overscheduled, and then we drive like crazy to make up time. Missing a dentist appointment might be frustrating, but it can't kill or injure someone. Driving aggressively and speeding can. That brings us to the subject of road rage. Road rage is loosely defined as overly aggressive driving or angry behavior exhibited by the driver of a vehicle. This behavior is usually accompanied by rude and offensive gestures, verbal insults, physical threats or dangerous driving methods directed at other drivers or pedestrians to intimidate them. But road rage can even lead to physical fights and crashes. And in extreme cases, road rage can also result in serious physical injuries or death. According to a study by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety that studied police records nationally, on average, there are more than 1,200 incidents of road rage reported per year in the United States. These rates rose yearly throughout the 6 years of the study. Over the past 20 years, a number of studies have noted that drivers who suffered the most from road rage are around 33 years old, and that over 96% of them were male. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, road rage was listed as the cause of 467 fatal crashes in 2015. This was up 500% from the 80 incidents recorded in 2006. And the number of firearms used during road rage incidents more than doubled from 2014 to 2016. The number of road rage incidents is continuing to grow, and experts believe there are several reasons. At the top of the list are traffic conditions in general. As we see more traffic and congestion, we see more road rage incidents. This and the accelerating pace of life could be the most significant reasons, but there are others, such as the anonymous feeling that many drivers have when they're driving a vehicle. Even tinted windows have been shown to have a relationship to road rage. Finally, there is a link between those who exhibit road rage and a disregard for other people and for the law. Whether it's because of media influence, a loss of values relating to society, or more people thinking that driving is an absolute right, the effect of road rage is still cause for concern for us all. It's for this reason that many states have enacted and are continuing to enact laws specially aimed at road rage. While Texas does not have a road rage law specifically, law enforcement officers can still ticket overly aggressive drivers for a number of moving violations that may apply, like excessive speed, unsafe lane changes, or tailgating. In serious cases, they can also arrest angry drivers under Texas Penal Code sections for reckless driving and for deadly misconduct. The next topic for our subject list is one that is not only mandated by the state of Texas, but is probably one of the most important in this class. In the state of Texas in 2018, there were nearly 70,000 arrests for driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. In that same year, nearly 1,000 people died as a result of alcohol and drug-related crashes. Because of numbers like these, Texas takes driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs very seriously. Alcohol-related accidents were the cause of more than 10% of the nation's motor vehicle fatalities in that and most recent years. When it comes to alcohol, you must understand, there is no waiting time, chemically speaking. Alcohol impairment starts with the first drink. Your size, gender, and the number of drinks that you've had, and the amount of food that you've recently eaten affect your body's ability to handle alcohol. As few as 2 beers in an hour can make some people legally intoxicated. Many people begin to show signs of impairment with even less to drink than that. Women, younger people, and people of smaller stature generally become impaired with less alcohol. With drugs, their effects and impairments are often harder to predict. Some people mistakenly think marijuana and other drugs don't impair their ability to operate a vehicle, but it simply isn't true. The fact is, marijuana delays driver reaction time, impairs judgment, and decreases coordination. Beyond marijuana are other illegal drugs, such as stimulants like cocaine and methamphetamine. These can cause aggression and recklessness. For drivers under the influence of sedatives or opioids, they will display dizziness, drowsiness, or even a loss of consciousness. We'll examine driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs more in depth a little later in our course. There are also often situations in which a driver's physical condition can cause dangerous driving circumstances having nothing to do with chemical impairment or emotional states. Driving requires concentration and mental alertness. Because of that, there are several physical factors that are actual requirements for drivers. As a Texas driver, you must not only pass a driving test and a written test, but you also have to meet certain minimum physical requirements. For instance, you have to pass a vision test, and if you need glasses, you'll likely be required to wear them while driving. Texas also has a program for the deaf and hard of hearing that helps eligible persons by identifying them and then issuing a visor identification card to help drivers in encounters with law enforcement. Maintaining a driver's license in Texas means that you must actually have the physical strength, coordination, stamina, and mobility required to operate a vehicle. It also means not having any health conditions that could cause you to lose control of your body in a way that might cause you to become immobilized during driving. You're also responsible for your overall health, to ensure that it doesn't interfere with your ability to drive safely. An example of this is when a driver is so fatigued or tired that they fall asleep at the wheel. This usually happens when a driver hasn't slept enough, but can also happen because of things like untreated sleep disorders, medication side effects, or even shift work. The problem is that you're never really aware of the exact moment when sleep takes over. It's obvious that no one wants to fall asleep at the wheel, and everyone knows it's clearly dangerous. But even just being sleepy affects your ability to drive safely, even if you don't fall asleep at the wheel. Being drowsy while behind the wheel makes it much harder for you to pay attention to the road. It also seriously slows your reaction time in the event that you have to brake or steer suddenly, as well as affecting your ability to make good decisions. Law enforcement and government organizations have great difficulty in determining precise numbers when it comes to drowsy driving crash statistics. The clue at the crash scenes caused by a driver falling asleep at the wheel are often extremely difficult to find. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration estimated that in 2015, about 90,000 police-reported crashes involved drowsy or sleepy drivers. These crashes lead to more than 40,000 people injured and more than 800 deaths. There is broad agreement among those organizations and experts, though, that all their numbers are underestimates. But there are certain statistics they know are correct. For instance, it is known that drowsy driving crashes occur most frequently between midnight and 6 a.m., or late in the afternoon. It's interesting that both of these times of the day, people experience dips in the biological rhythms that regulate sleep. These kinds of crashes often involve a single driver with no passengers and occur when their vehicle runs off the road at a high rate of speed, with no evidence of braking. They also happen more frequently on rural roads and highways. There are some things that you can do to lower the possibility of driving drowsy or falling asleep at the wheel, though. The go-to solution is to down a couple cups of coffee or an energy drink. There's a dangerous hidden problem with that, though. First, coffee or an energy drink, usually at best, is a short-term fix. Beyond that, though, is that if you're actually overly fatigued or sleep deprived, you can begin experiencing what are known as micro-sleep events. These are actually extremely brief losses of consciousness and can last from 3 to 5 seconds. That means if you're on a freeway driving from Amarillo to Lubbock at 3 o'clock in the morning, driving at 75 miles an hour, and you experience 3 seconds of microsleep, your car will travel 330 feet before you wake up. In that length of road, a lot of things can happen. So coffee might help for a quick pick-me-up, but there is no substitute for sleep. What might be a better solution is to pull over in a safe, well-lit, designated rest area and take a 20-minute cat nap, and then have a quick cup of coffee and get back on the road. Something else to consider is that it takes several minutes for caffeine to make its way into your system and boost your energy. This means that if you're already tired when you first drink a caffeinated drink, it might not take effect as quickly as you hope. Also, if you're a regular caffeine user, the effect may be much less. Another factor to consider when you're drowsy is that any of the alertness tricks that you may have heard or tried aren't really cures for drowsiness and can give you a false sense of security that might make things worse. Tricks like rolling down a window or turning the stereo up usually only work for a few minutes at best. Like I said, there's no substitute for sleep. Moving on, let's talk for a moment about the importance of having knowledge of the driving laws here in Texas and having an overall understanding of the big picture of the task of driving safely. Most of you have a solid nuts and bolts knowledge of the driving process and know the importance of following the laws. And in a few minutes, we're going to study some of the actual sections of the Texas Transportation Code that we drive under. But what else should you know? There are entire skill sets and knowledge bases that we as drivers should at least know about in order to be the best drivers that we can be. An example of this might be acquiring the basic knowledge to understand how our vehicles operate and perform on the road, having to do with their safe operation. It goes without saying that some cars have the capacity for more acceleration than others. But the same is true of braking power. A German sports car will probably have the ability to brake much more quickly and firmly than a mid-90s American-made pickup loaded down with hay. On the other hand, a driver who knows the limitations of their braking system might be much safer in an emergency stop situation than the driver of a $100,000 sports car who is overconfident and does not have experience with their vehicle. In short, we should know our vehicles and their limitations very well. But what about the laws covering driving? In theory, you should know every law that affects your privilege to drive and that affects your car. That means there are literally hundreds of laws that you're responsible for, as well as being able to exhibit and prove that you have knowledge of the actual task of driving. So what can you do? You need knowledge of the laws and conditions that affect your specific style of driving. For example, the depth of skill required by an occasional driver who works at home and only drives when absolutely necessary is going to be very different than that of a registered nurse consultant who has to work at 7 different facilities every week in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. You've probably seen and possibly even have a copy of the best source of information about the driving task in the state of Texas, and that is the Texas Driver's Handbook. Another ready source for understanding the driving task happens to be what you're doing right now, attending an online class for driver safety. Drivers who genuinely care about their safety and the safety of the people around them can go even further and enroll in classroom or behind-the-wheel courses to take their skills and knowledge to the next level. Finally, drivers who begin to understand all that is entailed with controlling vehicles on the road can enroll in a performance or defensive driving school. Texas has several nationally recognized performance and defensive driving schools. These companies focus on maximizing safety while increasing driving ability through classroom instruction, driving drills, braking exercises, lead and follow orientation systems, and in-car instruction. Some of the major car manufacturers even offer new car buyers chances to participate in driving schools. Manufacturers like BMW, Chevrolet, Ford, and Mercedes, as well as others, offer opportunities for drivers to learn the performance and safety limits of their vehicles in a safe and controlled environment with veteran driving and vehicle safety specialists. This concludes the third segment of our class. Now we'll take a short quiz, and following the quiz, we'll take a 15-minute break.